Hello, everybody. It's Gary Stuckey with Real Music. Over the Thanksgiving holidays, I've had a lot to be thankful for, but one of those things is being thankful to talk to one of the most talented guys ever in the history of music, the one and only Peter Asher. He's a producer, manager, singer, musician, actor. I mean, you name it, he's done it. So thankful to talk to him. If you haven't done it already, Google Peter Asher and check out everything. I mean, he's managed or produced albums by Linda Ronstadt, James Taylor, Cher, J.D. Souther, Bonnie Raitt, Dinah Ross, Robin Zander, Neil Diamond, Olivia Newton-John, Steve Martin, Robin Williams, just to name a few. He's won Grammy Awards for Producer of the Year, 1977, 1989 Producer of the Year, and 2002 Best Spoken Comedy Album. That's for Robin Williams, and he's a CBE, Commander of the British Empire. I mean, just so awesome, man. And these days he's been on tour with Jeremy Clyde of Chad and Jeremy, and they got some shows coming up on November 29th and 30th at Dakota Jazz Club in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and on December 1st, that's my birthday, by the way, at Old Town School, that's in Chicago, Illinois. So here's the interview. Here's Peter Asher. Recently I saw you online on Instagram, on Steve Perry's Instagram page and Olivia Harrison's page, and you were at her book party, and I saw you and I was like, yeah, I need to interview this guy, Peter Asher. And I just want to say it's an honor to speak to you today.
Well, thank you.
You're so welcome. Well, first of all, I want to ask you about your acting. I read you were an actor. So how did you get started doing that?
Yeah, I both my sisters and I got signed up by an agent, and we all actually acted a bit back then. My first film I did when I was 8, and I enjoyed it. And Claudette Colbert played my mother, which was exciting. For us, she was a real movie star. And and then I did a bunch of the old Robin Hood television series and whatever stuff. I enjoyed it. I did that until really I just started taking school seriously and couldn't do it anymore.
Right, totally understand that. And so how'd you decide you want to be a musician?
I grew up in a musical household. My mother, as you may know, was a classical musician.
Right.
My father was an amateur pianist, so I always grew up in very musical surroundings. And I never did learn enough or practice enough to be a proper musician, which is probably why I ended up being a record producer. I love music, and then once I discovered rock and roll, that became my primary love, as it did to so many of us in Britain. Rock and roll identified everything we admired about America. So it was an American invention.
Right. And so eventually you formed a band with Gordon Waller. So how did that start?
We met at school, and discovered that we both sang and played and tried doing it together just for the fun of it. And eventually ended up getting invited to come play at people's parties and finally got some paying gigs. We had a pub we could do at lunchtime when we could fit it in and so on. And started getting clubs and coffee bars and pubs, and that became a thing.
You got a record deal soon after. How did the record deal come about?
We were playing in a place called the Pickwick Club, which was a sort of more upmarket, late-night eating and drinking club that a lot of the sort of celebrities of the day would hang out in. The first time I met Michael Caine, for example, when he was a young, handsome actor, and people like that. And so it was a good place to play. And one night after we did our show, we were just the two of us with acoustic guitars sitting on bar stools. One night after we did the show, this guy came up and introduced himself as Norman Newell, said he was a A&R guy from EMI Records, and they would like to sign us, and they did.
Awesome. And the rest is history, as I say. And you got your first hit song was written by Paul McCartney and John Lennon. So how did that come to be?
Well, it's kind of a long story. I mean, excuse me, you probably know some of the story, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, when we'd all taken up acting, my sister Jane ended up taking acting very seriously and being turned out to be very good at it. And you know, unlike me, you know, where I ended up taking school sort of seriously, she quit school at about 16 and became an actor full time and became, you know, a successful working actor, which she is to this day. And back then, you know, she became sort of a movie star. So she was, in that context, invited to go and see this band, the Beatles, and all the fuss was being made about, and you know, the girls were all going crazy and screaming, and their first record was a hit and so on. And she was invited to go and see them at a London concert, their first actually in London, and write a piece, because she was known to be a music lover as well as a celebrity. And she was happy to do that. She went and saw the show, thought they were amazing, and she was taken backstage to meet them all afterwards. And she liked them, they liked her, and one of them liked her in particular and asked her out. So that's how she ended up going out with Paul McCartney for a number of years.
Wow.
And that meant that he was over at our house a lot. He would, you know, come over for meals or whatever and bring his laundry for my mom to do and stuff like that. So then he couldn't have any boyfriends too. And you know, he stayed with us for about 2 years, and that meant that I'd heard, you know, I got to hear some of the songs he'd written. Well Without Love was actually a song he'd written a couple of years earlier. And when I heard it, he explained that it was an unfinished song that the Beatles were not going to record because John didn't think much of it. He thought the opening line of lyrics, "Please lock me away," was kind of ridiculous.
Wow.
So I liked the song. So after we got this record deal and we were looking for songs, that song occurred to me, and I went back to Paul the following evening and asked him if we could have a go at it, since they weren't going to do it. It wasn't finished at that point. He just had a couple of verses, and that was it. And he said, yes, by all means, we're not doing anything with it, you can have it. And I had to prevail upon him to finish it, you know, to write the bridge that it needed, which he did. And so that we went on the list for our first recording session. And by the end of the session, no one was in any doubt but that was going to be our first single, and it was.
Right. And it was big. So later, did he feel bad? Did he have regret about not recording that song after it became so popular?
No.
No.
People get somehow under that misapprehension that they would kind of go, "Oh, we should have done it." Not at all. I mean, they took their careers as songwriters very seriously.
Yeah.
So to have a hit as a songwriter for them was fantastic, and in a way almost easier than having a hit themselves. What they wanted, of course, was both, which is exactly what they got. So, you know, it's the same when, you know, the Well Without Love went to number one in America and knocked one of their records off to number one. Or they did, you know, knocked it off. Is not the way. People go, didn't they feel bad about that? And the answer is no. I mean, no record stays number one forever. And when you eventually slide down, what better than to be replaced by a song you actually wrote?
That's true.
You're still making money out of it.
That's a good point. So after, you know, the success of everything kind of hit you, were you up there on stage one day and when all that hit you, did you go, wow, this is it? You know, did it kind of come to you, or how did that work out?
Well, no, I mean, the funny part is when you're young, you take that kind of success for granted.
Yeah.
It didn't occur to us how remarkable it was. You know, we formed a little duo. We got some gigs in clubs. You know, we got signed by a record company. Our record came out and people liked it. And it went to number one.
Right.
You kind of go, now I realize that each of those circumstances were 1,000,000 to 1 chance. You know, there were all kinds of other people trying to do the same thing and not successful. So I didn't realize how lucky we were or whatever, you know, any of that. So when you're young, you kind of go, oh, cool. Look, our record's a big hit. But as I say now, looking back on it, of course, I realized that each of those circumstances was remarkable.
Sure. I'm sure they were. And after the group finished, you started working over at Apple Records, and which is the Beatles label, of course, and there was a guy named James Taylor did you really believe in James? How did that start when you kind of discovered James, didn't you?
I could be said to have discovered James, yes, in a sense. He was a friend of a guitar player I knew very well in New York, who I'd played with extensively, called Danny Korchmar. And so Danny gave James, James was coming to London after a band he was in broke up. And Danny Korchmar, who was his childhood friend, gave him my phone number and said, "Oh, I have a friend in London I used to play with. Give him a call if you're there." So James called me up and introduced himself, and I invited him over. And yes, I was dumbstruck by how remarkably good his singing, his playing, and his songwriting, and his intellect overall were. And I continue to be amazed by that. And, we remain great friends on that basis. Awesome. So, yeah, and I said, "Look, it's a strange coincidence, but I've just got this new job. I'm the head of A&R for a new record company. I can find people, would you like a record deal?" He said, "Yes, please." And so that was that. So it was a combination of good luck and yes. Wow. People ask, did you initially know how good he was? The answer is yes. Did I expect him to be cover of Time magazine? Huge? No. Did I think that he was going to sell out the folk clubs and be the next big thing in the folk world, as they called it then, right, what would now be called singer-songwriter world? Right. Yes, I did.
Right. So amazing.
And
wow.
So I had no hesitation. The reason I moved to America was that, James and I agreed after we left Apple that I would become his manager, and so I knew his career was going to be based in the U.S.
Sure. That's so awesome. Awesome story. And of course, you had some help with a lady named Linda Ronstadt, right? And how was she like to work with and everything back in the day?
Linda's brilliant. She's one of the most remarkable women I know. She's probably the finest singer it's ever been my privilege to work with. And in addition to that, turns out to be, an extraordinary woman of intellect and taste. And I cannot speak highly enough of her as a friend and as a singer.
So awesome. So you had a lot of success, you just happened to work with two of the best ever, right? And you sold a lot of albums and multi-platinum success. I mean, how was that for you as a producer and a manager? How did you soak all that in?
It was great. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a profound psychological reaction to it. I mean, was I delighted? Yes. Sure.
Sure.
Of course. And yeah, I mean, when they put me on the cover of Rolling Stone, which they'd never done with a producer or manager before, it just was all good. Was I happy about that? Yes, you bet.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. So what's the secret of being a great producer?
A great client, no question.
Okay.
Same with management. People go, how do you become a great manager? The answer is you sign, a great client. I was asked to induct into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame the first two managers who were ever inducted into the Hall of Fame. And not surprisingly, they were Brian Epstein, who managed the Beatles, right, and Andrew Loog Oldham, who was the Rolling Stones' first manager.
Awesome.
So, that's how I became a brilliant manager.
That's it.
Discover the Beatles over Stones.
Wow.
And for me, of course, that was discovering James and Lennon.
Sure. Yeah, that's so awesome. I've been looking at the list. There's so many people that you've either produced or managed, and I was looking like Cher, producing her albums. How was she to work with?
Great. No, Cher's really hardworking, organized, determined, and she, when you look at her career, the fact that she's been successful as an actor and as a singer, and then as an actor again, she'll win a Grammy, then go back and win an Oscar.
Right.
She's exceptional.
That's awesome stuff. Well, you went on to become the senior vice president of Sony, so you're like jumping and you're moving up and everything like that. So how did that work out for you, for Sony?
Well, it was interesting. Tommy Mottola, who was running Sony at the time, asked me to come and join the company. I was there about 8 or 9 years, I think, and it was fascinating. It's a different culture, but obviously being in a big giant company like that. I wasn't particularly keen on all the political, juggling that went on with people vying for position and power and stuff.
Right.
You know, just like in a TV show or something. But some good records got made, and you know, Sony obviously is a very important and influential label. So I learned a lot working there, including everything we as managers believed about record companies, both the good and the bad, all turned out to be true.
Right. That's right. And but you also work. You're managing outside of music too, right?
Well, I a couple of people, not specifically music, that I ended up helping out for a year or two. Yeah.
I was noticing. I think Pamela Anderson was one of them. I think.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Pretty cool stuff.
She was a neighbor, and she asked me some help with some stuff, and I was delighted to help.
So
I
awesome.
like her.
And I was noticing Buddy Holly is a name that sticks out. So what some of your work with Buddy Holly projects and things like that? I love Buddy Holly.
Yeah, I mean, Gordon and I were huge Buddy Holly fans,
Sure.
and you know, he was, first of all, he was the only pop star who wore glasses, which made him cool to me, because
That's right.
it proved that you could actually be a bit nerdy and wear glasses and still be a pop star, which,
Sure.
you know, for some reason resonated with me. And I loved his songwriting and his singing and everything. So, and, you know, Gordon and I had a huge hit with the Buddy Holly song called True Love Ways.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went on to have several Buddy Holly hits with Linda Ronstadt. So yes, you know, Buddy's important.
That's awesome. And I know you've won Grammys and things like that. You know, so when you win awards like that, and you think about the work that you've accomplished, do you kind of sit back and you know, think about it, or you just kind of, like you said earlier, you just kind of take it as it comes, and you know?
Well, somewhere in between, I suppose. I mean, it's you know, one can take these things too seriously, because there's all kinds of incredibly important records that never did win Grammys. But at the same time, is winning more fun than losing? You bet it is.
Right.
So,
Sure.
you know, you enjoy it when it happens.
And so for all the years of being a musician and being a manager, producer, do you have a favorite thing to do? You like doing it all?
You're right. I mean, I particularly like the fact that I get to do it all. But if I had to choose, it would be producing. It would be the studio.
And during those times,
If I had to restrict myself to one thing.
oh sure. Did you whenever you were focusing on producing, how did you kind of decide, I want to give up the music for a while and do the producing and managing, things like that? Focus on that.
You mean give up performing? You mean?
Right. Did you kind of take a break from that as you back? You know, when you started managing and things like that, did you kind of take a break? Okay.
Yes. I mean, when I was concentrating on James and stuff, yes, I didn't perform. Then Gordon and I got back together some 27 or something. I think it was about 27 years later, and did some shows and that. And then I got back into performing then, and I still have a show that I do, you know, on my own. And sometimes with my friend Jeremy Clyde, which is a show we have coming up next week.
Yeah.
But I did stop performing for quite a while because I was very busy as a manager.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Jeremy Clyde, tell me about that relationship and how you started and everything.
Well, as you probably know, there were two duos in the British Invasion, Peter and Gordon and Chad and Jeremy, and we've always been friends. People would frequently confuse us with each other because it is quite a coincidence. I mean, in each case, the duo has the tall, handsome one who sings the low part and the short, nerdy one who wears glasses and sings the high part. So
right.
we there was strange similarities.
Right.
And, you know, Gordon died 1,000 years ago, whatever it was, and then Chad sadly died, you know, more recently. So at a certain point, Jeremy and I looked at each other and went, well, you know, maybe we should try and figure out something we can do together, so that it's Peter and Jeremy, and we get to do both sets of hits, and that's what we did.
Awesome. And I know you enjoy, and you still love doing it after all these years. So tell me.
I do. Well, Jeremy's an actor too, so
right.
we get to, you know, we get to do a bit of back and forth on stage and stuff. It's fun. The audience seems to enjoy.
Well, I won't hold you. I know you're a busy guy, but you know, looking over your career, and is there anything that you haven't done yet that you would still like to do?
Not that I can immediately think of, but I'll know it when it happens. You know, it'll probably be something completely unexpected. But yeah, I don't know. You know, I've got a radio show now. I wrote a book. I did this. You know, so things keep popping up, and I'll, you know, no doubt something new will come along.
Well, I appreciate you talking to me today, and it's been an honor. And oh yeah, one more thing. I know weren't you like was it CBE? You're like a
yes,
with the a commander of the British Empire, right?
Yes.
How cool is that? I mean,
it's cool. It was fun. You get to go to Buckingham Palace. And,
wow.
You know, they give you this very nice piece of bling, and it's very exciting.
That's so awesome. And I know that means a lot to you. And oh yeah, one more thing. Austin Powers. Is it true that Austin Powers was based on you?
The look of Austin Powers
okay.
is based on some photographs of me back in the day.
Wow.
The character was based on several people apparently combined, but but there are some photographs of me back then with the bad teeth and the glasses and so on and the haircut. But it has been acknowledged that the look of Austin Powers took something from photos of me. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Well,
yeah.
Well, thank you for talking to me today, and I'll be building up your shows coming up and everything. So, like I said, so honored to talk to you. You've accomplished so much,
right.
And I appreciate
Thank you.
you.
I enjoyed it, and forgive me for not being, you know, not realizing who you were when you called it. Like, I was in the middle of something else. What, Gary? Who?
Yeah, Hey, I get it all the time. No, thanks a lot. I appreciate you.
Okay, thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
All right, have a good day.